This is Basket Case Clubs, CPR Group's podcast where we turn basket case clubs into showcase clubs. G'day everyone and welcome back to Basket Case Clubs. My name's Michael Connolly and it is my pleasure to take you on this little journey through, well actually today's going to be a very interesting journey from Basket Casey to Showcasey goodness. And joining me as always is my brother and partner in crime, Steve Connolly. G'day Steve, how you doing?
Good morning. And we have to share that we are drinking out of our lovely new Basket Case Clubs mugs that were pulled together for us by the team here at CPR Group. And mine said, do they say the same thing? Your fill of Basket Casey goodness is the little tagline on it. So we look like we're on a late show. Which one of us is going to be the funny one?
What I'm Steve's doing a dance, a Conan dance. That is funny. You sit perfectly still. Only I may dance. Oh, to all our Simpsons fans, friends. Oh. Who's the funny one? What I'm really hoping, Steve, in answer to your question, is that all of our listeners have just said, "Oh, it's definitely Michael. He's definitely the funny one." But they're probably going, Michael probably thinks that he's the funny one, but I'm going to say Steve. Anyway, today we have another interview, Steve. Do you want to let us know what's going on with today's interview?
Yeah, I do. We have had the pleasure of catching up with some clubs in the last few weeks for some work that we've been doing to showcase clubs that have turned things around or that have struggled through really nasty damage from the floods earlier this year. And some of those clubs we have actually worked with in the past. And I really enjoy the opportunity to sit down with those clubs that we've worked with or that we are working with to talk through some of the challenges that they've faced and the ways that they've turned things around and gone from Basket Casey to Showcasey, as you say. And this particular club, West Mitchelton Rugby League Football Club in Brisbane, I sat down and had a really good chat with the president, Mike Little. So he came on board a few years ago, and that was around the same time that you were doing some work with the club. So what is it that you did with this club? Do you want to just quickly run us through that, and then we'll let Mike tell us the story?
Yeah, sure. So it was an interesting time for the club. The council had seen that they have probably better opportunities than they were capitalising on. They've got a bit of space, which is interesting. You know, they've got the luxury of field space that most other clubs don't have. So they had, as most clubs typically do, they'd had some turmoil in the committee. They'd had some interesting AGMs, some argy-bargy. And you and I have discussed that so many times, Steve. Like, why would you get involved in a club to go and have a fight at an AGM? Seriously. And so it wasn't so much that they were at risk of folding or really a bad basket case example. It was more that they had opportunities that council could see that the club could capitalise on that they weren't. And so our job was to go in there. And what was so good about it was that the committee at the time were, for the most part, really accepting of our presence. And that's one of the big challenges with particularly small clubs that have never engaged consultancy services in the past, to then accept an outsider coming in and giving them advice because they know how to do everything. Obviously, look how good we are. But as evidence that they didn't know, they couldn't see the forest for the trees. A few of the graphs that I put up that literally, I remember the treasurer going really close to the TV where I was displaying them. He's going, hang on, that can't be us. That can't be us. I'm saying, dude, you're the treasurer. You're the one who presented these financial reports year after year. So for 16 years, I had access to financial performance for 16 years. And all I did was graph it. And I thought, look, let's just pick something. Let's pick net profit or loss for those 16 years and graph it. And it was like a sawtooth that went above the line, below the line, above the line, below the line, above the line, below the line. And they had no idea that their overall financial performance had been so fair to Midland. And when I added it up, I said, do you know that over 16 years, the total profit that you have made in that time, so add up all of the times that you've been above the line and subtract all of the times that you've been below the line, it was about $6,000.
Whoa.
For 16 years, they'd been working their ring holes off, for $6,000. And that was a shock to them. And to see the sawtooth from money in from grants and then money out from the projects actually happening in a different financial year, or the mismanagement in one year of the canteen and then turning things around the next year, and then it slipping back the year after with changes of committee. So it was a great demonstration of the fact that, yeah, actually we could do with some help. So yeah, I've been fascinated to listen to this interview with Mike, knowing that he took over in probably a pretty good time, given that we were able to work with them and they had some opportunities that they were able to capitalize on. They'd been through some tough times. It rains in Brisbane, and where they are, certainly they're no stranger to a little bit of wet weather. So yeah, fascinated to hear Mike's story now.
Let's get into it. Let's start by maybe talking through when things maybe haven't been so good for the club and some of the challenges that the club's faced in recent years.
I was a local junior, so I played all the way up to under 18s here, then left and then come back play some seniors for a few years, and then left and come back again and coach in 2013. Now, at that time, and Mitchy's had like only 6 or 7 presidents in the last 65 years. So there's been a history of long tenure of presidency. So the last fellow, Dave Campbell, I played footy with him, still a good mate. He got me back to the club, and basically it was sort of Dave, his wife Rebecca, and a number of other, committee members just flogging themselves out, week in, week out. And at that stage I had zero idea about what was happening, on a committee level here at the club. It was just I was looking after opens, and David had the field open, and, I'd rock up, play, have a few beers and then go. And then in 2016 we were encouraged, myself and one of the other coaches, Clint Dolan, we were encouraged to come and sit on a committee meeting. And we come and sat on the committee. I only knew a couple of the members, which I'd played football with and really grew up with, etc. And it was quite adversarial. At that present time, I think the club had a full-time barman. So he would come and open the bar during the day, he'd line mark, he'd mow, etc., etc. And so there was quite a issue going on at the club right then around cash flow and, and money, etc., and whether or not that was good value. And so when we joined, they were, discussing, making the barman redundant. And there was other concerns around, the way that the committee were, being very adversarial towards council. In particular, they had a tenant down in the gym there, like a commercial tenant. He'd done some building works in the past without approval, all that type of thing. So it was quite a tense environment, and to be quite honestly, it was quite a dysfunctional committee. And I'm sure most clubs go through this with people exercising almost vicariously their needs and wants for their vision for the club. And so, Clint and I decided, all right, we'll join the committee. And we're both still on the committee today. I took over as a coaching director at that time. And, we had quite a few issues with the committee. We had a grant for the dressing sheds out the back. Our opens were pressured to opens had to finish it off and, do certain things around the club in the committee's eyes, to be able to, show the value and what they contribute towards the junior. So it was quite junior football centric. We had another tenant with Gridiron, the Brisbane Rhinos. And it was sort of us and a couple of other opens teams sort of all playing and training out of here. But it was so junior football and club orientated and looking at the place as if, well, this is ours, everyone get out and, we'll do it the way we want to do it, etc., etc. And even, more so towards council. And, just doing simple things like, getting approvals to put structures up and things like that. So I took over as coaching director and got more involved with the committee and saw what happened. We had a bit of a power play about a year later, one of those old, AGMs where there was a challenge for the presidency, and there was a representative from the current committee that was going for president, and there was an old, and he's a life member here, Cole Callaghan. He was also on the committee. He coached me in under 18s and in opens, and and we've remained great mates ever since. And he was challenging as well, because we both were sort of thinking, well, this is going a really bad way. They wanted to shut the bar. That current committee, didn't think that alcohol was something around junior sport, etc., etc. So there was quite a power play around, well, how are we going to supplement, $80,000 to $100,000 worth of revenue to the club?
So it sounds like there was a real kind of junior versus senior faction.
No, it was no. I
oversimplifying it?
think it's probably an oversimplification. Like, we always, on an opens or senior football level, obviously, it's a mini pathway for the kids when they get to under 18s. They can still play rugby league and go forward. And that's what we're trying to push forward. Some more inclusiveness, and us just trying to shut it all down. Closing the bar, etc., etc. So, Cole became president that year, and that's when Michael, we received a grant to put up to develop another strategic plan for the club. Once that happened, once Cole became president, basically there was a clear out of, when their representative didn't win, they just sort of all tailed off one by one over the year.
It's funny how that happens.
It is. It's funny how that happened. And of course, and I'm sure everyone who's had anything to do with the committee of the club taking over legacy issues, legacy debt. And so, when Cole was president, that was really the start, and working with Michael about putting a strategic plan together. We really started to sort of open our focus to look at it more of a facilities management role rather than managing just a rugby league role. Because at the end of the day, to manage 3.5 hectares of fields and multiple tenants, etc., you really need to have that mindset of a committee that you're really looking after the facility, and your role is to maintain, improve the asset where you can, and then also to be able to make it open to as many community groups as possible. And so that journey really began when Michael sat down with us, and most of the people, I think, apart from two, are all still on the committee since that, I think it was 2016, when that all occurred. Now, Cole, and we got our plan together, we implemented it, we actually implemented our 5-year plan within 2 years. And it was quite a simple plan, I think, and Michael really hammered this home about people making these things probably more complicated and more unachievable. We had one previously that said, we'll have 1,000 members by this time, all those sort of warm, motherhood type statement things. So that was, and Michael broke it down into sort of 7 or 8 simple tasks that we needed to achieve, and we really set our minds to, and we did that. The learning for me, and I'm not even president yet, I was vice president to Cole for those 2 years. The real learning, and I think every club can take something out of this, is it's all about the right people. Committees need to have contributors on the committee, people who are willing to volunteer their time, and there's a lot of time. Just running rugby league alone, just our junior and our senior component, would take up, every second weekend. We're here every, Sunday, Saturday, every second weekend for 12, 16 hours. And everyone has to have the same vision, and everyone has to have, the same direction. And it's all about the right people on the bus. And that's, we've had real stability with our committee. We've had, 1 or 2 come and go, since 2016. But, getting those right people in the place, and particularly in the key roles like treasurer, secretary, they're really important. And obviously the president role as well as the leader, or, the head of the organisation. So, and then I took over in 2018 as president. Cole stood down. He asked me to, could you step up? And I said, sure, mate. So we've got our AGM this Saturday, so I'll be, going again. But, we're going to have the same committee, moving forward again. I put myself, when I took over, I said, all right, I'll do this for 5 years. I think in any organisation, whether it be a club, social club, a company, anything like that needs strong leadership, but it also needs continuity and to be able to see out a vision and to be able to achieve the goals you want to achieve. So we do a lot of planning as far as, all right, what do we want to achieve year on year, and being able to improve the club moving forward. So and then obviously 2020 hit with COVID. Massively disrupted everything that goes on with the club, particularly when we're talking about cash flow, revenue, rugby league, all of our costs to sort of field a team, jerseys, insurance, building insurance, just building insurance, public liability, and our player insurance alone for the club is like $40,000 a year, and you throw in jerseys another 20 and so forth. So you've got all these things front end loaded. COVID hits, we've got all our stuff, we're getting our bills, and it was a really tough time. So we had to become and obviously the club closed for that 3 months. There wasn't anything we could do about it, and we had to deal with all of our vendors and sort of stretch out credit terms and sit down and meet over the phone and so forth. A lot of electronic communication between the clubs as well, but between the committee members. So it was quite a different and difficult time. Ultimately, we were able to get a season in 10 weeks. The year after was much the same, and our other tenant, Brisbane Rhinos at the time, they also suffered, and we ended up, and I'm sure Brett's going to hate me saying this, but we didn't charge them any field hire fees that year, etc., because we knew that everyone was doing it tough. But during that time, it did open an opportunity for us as a committee and as a club. So the tenant that we had down there, because they were a gym, they ended up basically saying, well, that's it, we can't go on. We're actually in the process of renewing a proper lease agreement with them. We were doubling his rent, so I think it was sort of a perfect storm. We were asking him to pay market rates, essentially, and it's a perfect storm, and we basically got, that part of the club back. We had to make sure that the structures that were built were pulled down. They didn't have DA approval. All the fun things that, as a club, the legacy issues that were created before me. But that's really where, our relationship with council, Michael, in 2016, we started to repair that relationship with council. We met with Brett, and we really started to work towards, well, as a club, we need to be stronger in our corporate governance as far as, how we're managing it. Some strategy around the grants, not just going for whatever's out there, or what do we want to do this grant for, et cetera, et cetera. So, during COVID, getting that piece of, infrastructure back to us as a club, really gave us opportunity. We since then, during COVID, we built a gym down there for the use of all of our members. We also, have another tenant, West Brisbane Panthers, who are a senior rugby league football team that play in the Brisbane Rugby League. So we partnered with them. We brought them on as a tenant as well. Obviously, always thinking about cash flow and also about the revenue opportunities that these partnerships with local sporting groups actually bring to the club, and avail us to be able to have nice looking fields and and being able to support our members, not only our rugby league members but also our tenanted members. Then in 2021, Brett and state government brought an opportunity to us with Arana Touch. So they were previously located out of West Arana Hills, a rugby league football club, playing on one of their backfields, etc. Now they had a $200,000 lighting grant that they couldn't place. They had to deal with, I think, Ferny Hills High, and then they pulled out of it, and so they brought us this opportunity, and that was a fantastic thing for us. It was obviously in the middle of the COVID stuff, and we were able to do a lease with them. We did a three-year lease within the term of our current lease with council. They're still here today. They played last night. But they brought in infrastructure. $200,000 worth of lighting. We were able to light up a previous almost unused portion of the field up the back there, which again improved the facility, but also made it an attractive place to be. Now that relationship with Touch, the lease, we've got a fantastic relationship with them. They probably one of the best tenants we've got. There's 700 odd kids that play here every Wednesday through 20 weeks of the year. There's only a little bit of an overlap. Yeah, it's massive. So, like say, there's cars parked all the way. Like the car park's full, cars parked all the way. It's only one car in and out down the road. We haven't had many complaints, which is a good thing. But it's a massive community thing. And since then, and they've brought in Touch, schools, Touch carnivals here, etc. So, that relationship, and through guidance through Brett, putting together a formal, sublease with them, really showing us the way as to, okay, well, this is how we want you to do it. Previous committees would just go, you know what, we're going to do it our way anyway, and we'll beg forgiveness rather than ask for permission. So that's a real change of mindset you've got to have to be able to work with council. But since being able to work with Brett, and doing the right things in the right order, and also working with Touch, we were able to secure a number of other grants, shade sails that we had installed earlier this year, grandstand seating over there. Council in 2020 COVID year did a fully funded resurface of the main field here, which was a massive project. It was closed for almost 20 weeks, but no one was playing on it at the time. We've since received another, couple of grants, a partnership with council, and also through the Gambling Benefit Fund, been able to secure another $150,000 with some in kind, about $50,000 of money between us and our other tenants. We've split that up to be able to, make use, re-irrigate, and make use of that backfield that's being totally resurfaced and redone, a rejuvenation of our main field there, of our backfield there on field 3. In all of this, as a committee, and we've formed with our other tenants, mainly with Touch, we formed a facilities management committee. So that's where we together work and strategise about, the facility itself, and okay, this is how we're going to prepare our grants. We have a fellow called Paul Knight. He worked for the Sunshine Coast City Council in a similar role to Brett, so he's been quite instrumental. He's part of the Touch organisation. He's been quite instrumental in putting together our grants, putting everything together correctly, getting the application for works, making sure they're approved. All those little steps that weren't happening before, and we're all sitting there going, why didn't we get any grants? The moment we did that, we're getting grant after grant after grant, and one of the main mantras, within our committee is that we have here is that if we build it, they'll come. If we provide the environment and we provide a hospitable place for people to come and have a great experience, because really, that's non-sport dependent. It's not a particular, sport. It's not rugby league. It's not just gridiron. It's not just touch. It's about, providing a space for the community to come and hold things and do things. So we also have a great relationship with the Bunya Lions. So we also do with BCC and Andrew Wines. And we've done it for the last probably 4 or 5 years, bar the last 2 because they were rained out. A Christmas carols in the park. So I go to the meetings with the Bunya Lions and help them through that. We sponsor that as well, and we help them run the day, and we make it, again around this mantra of being able to make a great place for people to come, whether it be whatever sport you're interested in, whether it's the Lions Christmas carols, etc. Whether you're at Mount Maria and we allow the schools and so forth to use our fields, it's all those little things that make the space itself, and that's the whole idea about facilities management, is to continually improve the space so everyone can add some value and also get some value from the facility itself and how the club's run. So, the committee isn't just around West Mitchelton Junior Rugby League Football Club. It's managing multiple tenants, managing multiple events, everything from the bar, having people in the canteen, all volunteers. No one gets paid anything, and as all clubs know, it's all on your own dime. But this is where I come back again to, it's all about the people. The right people on the bus, the right strategy in place, and all working towards a common vision. And at the end of the day, this club's really good at making sure that we get the right people. This probably won't make air, but we've got a no dickhead policy, essentially. They self-select pretty quickly.
Yeah, and if you live by that, the dickheads will quickly, as you say, realise that they're not welcome.
No, that's right.
And you don't need to call them to account because the rest of the members who aren't dickheads will do that for you.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. I work in franchising, so the number one thing about franchising is relationships, and the transference between the culture that you need within a franchise organisation are directly transferable to running a facility like this, but also being able to deal with people, being able to deal with issues. We very rarely have issues here, very rarely. And they're usually around the sport itself. It's usually around a coach, or it's usually around, we very rarely have any issues with council. We work very closely with Brett. Brett's been absolutely fantastic for us as a club, providing guidance. He's always phone call away. If we're putting grants together and got any questions, he always rings me back, always gives me answers, whether I like them or not. That's that's another thing. But again, we've got to accept these things. The rules are rules. Work within the rules, play the game, and you will get success. Yeah.
So you mentioned some of the turmoil. Would that have been about 2014, 15?
Yeah.
About then?
Yeah.
And so at that time, and you touched on, cash flow issues and revenue issues. Have you got any more detail as to how bad things were? Was the club in dire financial straits?
Well, I wouldn't say dire, but there were definitely some issues. We owed money to our jersey manufacturer, Emu, from 3-4 years prior to that, and there were multiple examples of that, even leading up to when I took over. There was, corporate governance, was almost non-existent, and it really, so we basically sat down as a committee and said, well, what do we need to do, So, we strategised point of sale, number one, right? So we can run stock inventory, so we can have, proper, details about transactions, revenue, cost of sales, all those types of business type things. Now, being a business owner myself, that's sort of what I brought to the table. Our committee's full of, we've got, another person who owns a business, CN Constructions, Chris. He's in our committee. We've also got a number of ADF members as well in our committee. So we all bring, certain, attributes to the table, that assist in being able to run the club and put your strategies together and go, well, what's the priority of the things that we need to do that's really going to make life easier for everyone. That was the real thing. There was, there was jersey manufacturers, there was other debtors out there that, some that we didn't even know about. You'd get a bill rock up for, I remember one for a coffee machine that had since long been gone. No one could find this coffee machine. You get an invoice for $2,500 out of the blue for something that happened, 6 years ago. So there was a lot of that type of stuff. They were using Maya, but they were still using a ledger, a written ledger. There was all those things. So during that, we brought in Xero first up. We then moved all of our chart of accounts over. We engaged a bookkeeper to assist us with getting everything right. We then brought in a point of sale, which and all facets of the business, canteen, so all of our business units, You know, again, just to make transparency number one, where everyone's involved and everyone knows the comings and goings of the club. But it was those sort of strategies and improving the facility that's able to increase the revenue, because that's the number one goal. You have to increase revenue, and you've only got certain revenue streams. You know, we've got registrations, we've got bar, we've got canteen, we've got our tenants and field usage, you know, and we've got fundraising as well. You know, and you throw in sponsorships. They're the only revenue streams that you have, and most of those revenue streams are front end loaded at the beginning of a calendar year. So, you know, it's all about, okay, so how are we going to raise the money in order to get to this? And so that's obviously where, you know, attracting other tenants to the club, but also making other tenants pay, you know, their fair way. And again, and this is through guidance through Brett around, well, what is the commercial rate for field hire? And when you sit down and you calculate around, you know, the cost of the field and all of our operational expenses, in the maintenance, you know, we're talking around about $110,000 a year just to break even, if we want to do it right.
And if you're giving it away for free,
if you give it away, that's right.
There's no way to recoup.
So when you calculate it, and I, you know, I love my Excel spreadsheets. So I sat down with a calculation with those operational costs, then looked at the available time that the fields could be used, and then worked out how many, and then had, you know, okay, how many members did each, you know, club have that were tenants here, and then basically just divided those costs into their percentage of usable hours, right? And I come up with the, you know, and it's around that $57. So we're talking about per player per year. So, and we're talking about almost 2,000, you know, people actually, you know, using, you know, members or players using the field. So it was, you know, I think prior to that, there was just, you know, thrown up a figure of however many dollars an hour it was, and when you question, well, how'd you come up with that? Oh, we just said it was this much. So
stuck a finger in the air for
but that's the thing about, you know, a little bit of the corporate governance around, well, this is how we've calculated our figures. This is how we do it. Brett, this is how I've done it. Are you okay with that? Brett said, yep, great. And then we move forward with that, rather than just putting an arbitrary figure out and kicking the can down the road, which is unfortunately invariably what happens in volunteer organisations. Is if things become too hard, things get kicked down the road because it's someone else's problem.
Yeah, we've got this adage that systems are better than sweetheart deals,
Yep.
and it sounds like you guys very much live by that, in that you can't just be kind of flying by the seat of your pants or making
No.
things up as you go.
No.
You need to have a system, and what this means is that for transferability and continuity, and I love the point that you made earlier about the fact that you know, kind of committed yourself to 5 years in the role, and that turnover, where that happens really regularly in organisations, they do struggle to
Yep.
maintain momentum, and, you know, particularly if there's a bit of an issue or a bit of a faction happening within the club, and, you know, there's a takeover, and
Yep.
there's a less than amicable handover period following that AGM, it can lead a club into really difficult times.
Yes.
So we advocate for avoiding a clean sweep where you can, and trying to roll the committee over, and it sounds like that's what you've had happen. A couple go here and there.
Look, succession planning is, you know, key. Now, you know, from, you know, my professional with franchising, it's systems and processes. I'm a systems and process man. I'm a checklist. When you got here, I was doing a checklist for camping for 2023. So that is me. So, you know, and that's, again, what I bring to the table is that, well, this is the system and how we do it. This is the vision. This is the steps we need to go through, and, you know, to make sure that we can go from, you know, A to B in the shortest possible distance, but also in the right way. Yeah, systems and processes are the key to any successful organisation, and being able to stick to them, but also allowing others to have input to be able to create those systems, because one person just can't create the system, because it needs input from other people, and you can't get buy-in unless other people are involved within the process itself. So that's that whole, you know, cooperation, you know, consultation, whatever you want to call it, you know, collaboration, whatever you want to call it. That's the most important part, because every club has, you know, whilst we all have our own little unique issues, when you put the blanket over it, they're all the same. Doesn't matter what sport it is, doesn't matter what field it is, they're all the same types of issues, and it's more people and process than it is anything else.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that leads nicely then into the final question, which is what other advice would you give to other organisations that might be facing some of the same challenges that you guys have been through?
The right people on the bus. Make sure that you can attract the right people into the right roles, most importantly. Crucially around the officer roles, president, secretary and treasurer. It's very important to have those clear defined roles and what they are and the responsibilities within the club, and then having the support staff around that are all around the same goal and vision for what they all want to achieve collectively. It can't be about the individual, and that's probably the biggest thing I can say is that you cannot let egos run an organisation, because it does not work in the business world, and it certainly doesn't work in a volunteer or a social club role. It's a cancer that has to be cut out, because otherwise it will fester and it will ruin a club. Most importantly, it will ruin the club, and then everyone will stand back and go, oh, it wasn't me, it was this bloke over here. Well, accountability, being accountable for what you do, and that's all about attracting the right people who have that same philosophy about being accountable, wanting to be involved and be part of the process. They're the people that you need to get around the club. Once you get that, everything else, build it, they'll come. Everything else will begin, once you have a strong leader, everything else will begin to fall into place, basically. And then it's about that committing long term to stay together to see this through. Because you can't have the swapping and changing, you can't have a 50% clean out. Really, even a 25% clean out is a loss of not only IP to the organisation, but it's a loss of people helping out, and it's a loss of their experience around for whatever they bring to the table as well. So that's probably the most important thing to do, and then create your succession plan from that point. Now, I'm already grooming the next, president. Not that he knows this yet, but but it's about that continuity through. Whilst I may be the president, our meetings only go for an hour tops. We stick to the point. We discuss what needs to be discussed. We're all actually great friends, which is an added bonus. We've all become quite close. That's sort of what happens. And then everyone's willing to work together and understand what needs to be done. The right things in the right order.
Yeah. Plenty of clubs have been through people issues, because you put a group of people together and they're not all going to get on.
That's
and
right.
They're going to have different priorities and they're going to not always see eye to eye, and sometimes that's going to be junior parents saying, oh, we're just a junior club and we don't want any alcohol around here.
We don't want senior footy here.
Don't want senior footy.
Yeah, that's right.
But what that fails to recognise is that they're taking away, as you touched on, the pathway for their own children to stay at the same club.
That's right.
Because the reality is that a lot of the time when a junior player ages out and they've got to go looking elsewhere, that they don't find another club easily.
No.
They can't find somewhere where their mates are playing, so they're lost to the game.
That's right.
And if you lose them then, you might get them back down the track. But it's tough.
The competition for kids' attention these days is, like when I was growing up here, there was no Xbox or whatever it was. It was riding bushy and coming down
Exactly.
here and coming to training.
I'm blown away. I've got a couple of my older two are 11 and 13, and we've got a little one as well. But Hudson, my son, who's 13, he's not, like, he's a bit of a sporty kid. He plays football, he plays basketball. But, all of his mates, if they could, they would spend an entire day inside on an Xbox or PlayStation.
Yep.
And I was lucky. I grew up in a neighbourhood on the sunny coast, which was pretty quiet, and it was a bunch of kids around my age. So we would be playing cricket on the road. We'd be playing tackle footy in the spare field next to my mate's house. We would go fishing. We'd go away, up the river for the entire weekend by his age. And Mum and Dad would say, "Oh, we'll see you on Sunday." But we might sit inside and play a computer game for half an hour, and we're like, it's boring. Let's get outside. Yeah. But it's so different now.
It is.
And kids
iPads,
phones,
yes,
yeah. And And you got to strike the balance, because even, you know, by grade 4, my son was ahead of this, so they introduced a one-to-one iPad program in her primary school, and from grade 4, you know, she's got her own device. So if they don't learn how to use that shit, by the time they get to high school, or by the time they get to university, if they go all into the world of employment, they're going to be behind if they don't know how to use it.
100%.
But it's hard to keep the balance
It is, and, you know, retention's one thing, you know, and that's the whole thing about, you know, creating the environment, and most importantly, it's around the parents. Like, if you create a good environment for the parents, the kids don't give a playing footy, they're with their mates, like, they don't care. If mum and dad are happy, the kids are happy.
Parents are paying. Got to keep them happy.
And that's exactly right. But, you know, to attract, you know, new players, like there's rules with Rugby League Brisbane. So if we can't have any more than 2 people from one club from the same age group transfer to this club in any 1 year.
Is it like an anti-poaching
thing? Which is fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it is, because obviously, you know, and I'll use Arana as an example. You know, committees was a basket case. They had a paid coaching director from the Broncos, and sort of, you know, now that was one of the strongest clubs in Brisbane.
Yeah.
Now they didn't field a team from under 15s and up last year, first time ever, right?
Shit.
But they were under 14s having to play up, and they've had to play up for the last 3 to 4 years, up an age group, just to field a team. So, you know, to attract, it's so hard to attract new players, basically. So that's what it's all about, providing the experience for them.
And if they're not playing by that age, they're not going to come and play footy.
No.
Because the parents, you know, the kids themselves say, I don't want to play a tackle sport, contact sport, and the parents are fearful, and that's why they haven't ever played. So you've got to get them in younger than that. You can't be attracting new kids to the sport.
One of the first things we did when we had the spill, the leadership spill, and Cole took over, is we said, right, well, this is the whole thing about, you know, being able to plan in those 5-year blocks, and say, well, because we didn't have an under 17s that year, we didn't have an under 18s either. So, you know, we were in that same spot, and so we all decided as a committee, all right, well, we'll make under 6. We've got to start here, because we're not going to get them at 13, 14, 15 to create it. So, you know, so we made 6s and 7s free.
Okay.
At the cost of the club, and that age group. So, you know, there's the delineation between when under 6s and 7s were paid for. So that age group, we are still struggling to play. So they had a merged team with Albany Creek this year. But the year and below that we started, so we still got 3 teams, right, in under 10s. All right, so, you know, that strategy, right, is what's building to. So now.
So they were now under 10s. They were the ones that had free under 6s and 7s, and they've stayed solid since then.
So that brings a massive influx at the bottom level, right? You've got to fill from the bottom. This is a very unique situation where, you know, it's a basic. It's an inverse funnel, right? You've got to try and pour it in the little top end, right, to get the growth at the back end. So to make sure that you have teams. So, you know, like I got a 15-year-old and 18-year-old. So he's 17 and he played 18s this year. They won the GF, you know, blah, blah, blah. But that's the first time. That's only the second year we've had an under 18s in the last 7 years.
Wow.
Right. And now through that, right, we're still going to struggle with these guys here. But through that, we've basically got the next 5-6 years that we'll be fielding teams all the way through. And that's about the retention and, you know, and we're working so with our relationship with Mount Maria. We're about to appoint a schools development officer on our own dime. That, you know, is going to work with Mount Maria, Ferny Grove, and Mitchie High, and we're going to support that by providing coaching, development. You know, sending, you know, some of our senior players to training and so forth, and also we're organising a sort of 3-game sort of state of origin tournament called Friday Night Lights between the 3 schools, because none of the other schools actually have rugby league as a sport anymore. I went over to Park High, but we played rugby league. We played Combank Cup. We got to semi-finals. Like, you know, it was. But now these schools, for whatever reason,
so much
don't have.
competition.
So Mitchie High, you know, Freddie contacted Mitchie High. So one of the under-18s players from this year, he's the school captain over there. He went and approached, on his own, I didn't even ask him, he approached the school and said, hey, I want to come back and coach next year a rugby league team here because I want to get involved with because we'd already had Friday night lights between Ferny Grove and Mount Maria, and I got a phone call from the deputy principal saying, hey, we've got Macca's, come and see me about this. He's going to coach. We're really keen for an affiliation. We've got 40 kids who want to play rugby league. How do we do this affiliation? And sort of that was all born. I was like, well, okay, this is what we. So this is what I mean about
like
strategy.
A future president there, Mike.
Yeah.
He sounds like a kid who's a real go-getter.
So that's what I mean about they're the strategies you could. There's no point sitting around going, oh, we just can't get players. Well, fuck, you got to create something to make something. And you've got to create it out of thin air, whether you like it or not. And that will bring players to the club. In these sort of 13s to some kids who have, never played footy before.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother us.
No.
We're not about, we had one team win a premiership this year. We had 2 last year. I think we've won 80 in 65 years as a club. But there's no, we're going to have a Div 1 side here. I don't play the games. I've moved coaches on with that.
Okay.
With that
Who
attitude.
were too competitive.
Sending letters to local schools, on Mitchie letterhead that he dodged up, saying, hey, we're trying to put a Div 1 team together.
Without the approval of the board?
Knew nothing. So I had to kick him out. And, we lost players, obviously, on the back of it, because there was this whole clique of parents.
But do you want them?
No.
Exactly.
So that team, so this was like 3 years ago, that team won the grand final last year, right? Okay. So under a different coach, an ex-Mitchie boy, doesn't even have a kid here. It's, it's one of his, it's one of his nephews, right? So, it's so, that's what it's been. It's about relationships.
Yeah.
I'm pretty brutal. Like, if I don't like you, I'll tell you. If you piss me off, you're coming to see me and we're having a chat.
Yeah.
I don't let any behaviour go unchecked.
But that's walking the walk, because so many clubs will say we've got a no dickhead policy, we've got a no pay, no play policy, and they'll say these things because they sound good as rhetoric, but then when push comes to shove and people are being they don't call them to account. They don't call them out for doing the damage that they're actually doing to the club's culture.
No, that's right.
That's a massive
trap.
There was because they don't want to get in trouble.
No.
But someone will send a lawyer's letter or threaten legal advice, and the committee will back off. We don't want to upset the person.
You got it. Like I'm a head on. Like I'm going out there train. I don't care. I'm going to have a crack at it.
Yeah.
With that adversarial sort of committee when I first joined, like the treasurer at the time, getting rid of the bar, blah blah blah. Now this is Mitchelton, right? So it's low socioeconomic. It's it was predominantly housing commission and so forth, and always has been. I grew up at Capera, so the treasurer at the time. Right, the no pay, no play policy. He was like, if you can't pay your money up front, right, then we're not registering you, right? And this is the whole argument. So you can't do that, mate. Like, because they'd come in and give you $50 here,
and if
blah, blah,
if they're keeping up with their payments and you've got an agreement, and there's a system. Fine.
Yep.
That's the real work.
No, and that's exactly right. So he and when he left, he deleted all his emails. He was a prick, right? But walking the walk, right? You just can't do that. Like, yes, you've got to be hard and fast, but you also got to be flexible and
absolutely
the epidemiological things that are going on, particularly around finances and the families that are here. A lot of them are army. A lot of them, are born and bred locals as well.
Yeah.
Some of them living in the house that they grew up in. That type of thing, and being able to, so what. Once he left, right, we introduced DDR. So
beautiful. They
signed a DDR. We did with
you can do it at the gym. You can do it in the world of business.
Yeah.
So why not do it?
I suggested it to that community. They go, oh, no way in the world. Like we don't want to change. We don't want to we want to find solutions to problems. We just want to say this is it, done. Thank you very much. Like if Clint and I and Shoney, who's the current, and Shoney and I have been involved all at the same time.
Yep.
If I'd hate to think what the club would be if those people stayed, or if we just said, we're out.
Sometimes, unfortunately, that happens. Sometimes you feel like you're just banging your head against a brick wall, and you don't need to do this.
No.
This is not. This is in addition to work. This is in addition to raising kids.
Yep.
This is in addition to maybe having a bit of a life as well.
What life?
Yeah, I say that tongue in cheek.
I think I had my first weekend off a couple of weeks ago because I coach under 15s. I was assistant coach for reserve grade, so I'm spinning a million plates. That's why you're putting to have people around to help.
Yeah,
Can't just
absolutely.
be one.
Yeah.
First weekend off in I think 26 weeks or something the other week. So we're on a Saturday. I didn't have to be down there at 7 o'clock, blowing the car park.
You must have
setting up game
felt
days.
a bit surreal.
Oh, it was ridiculous. It was like, what the am I going to do? If I wasn't doing all this, mate, I reckon I'd be 140 kilos.
But if you get the personal satisfaction that it sounds like you get from your involvement, then you're going to keep doing it.
I love it.
Yeah, and the club's obviously very lucky to have yourself and Shoni and the team that are currently at the helm. But unfortunately, sometimes members can be swayed by the small little problematic group that you'll find in any group of people.
Yep.
And if you don't nip that in the bud really promptly, it can grow into this thing that you get sick of fighting and you walk away, and the club then misses out.
It
the
does,
club suffers because of that.
Yep.
So you've got to.
You'll invariably lose good people who are just misguided by listening to the ramblings of lunatics.
One bad apple spoils the bunch.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. So you've got to get rid of that bad apple.
you do.
Or at
You
least
do.
call them to account.
Yeah.
So it's great to hear that you.
Well, you just got to deal with things as they happen. Like a parent might come up and go, "I didn't really like this," and go, "Sweet as, let's go grab them out." And like, "Oh, what really?" I said, "Yeah, I'm not."
Let's deal with the problem.
I don't have a meeting about a meeting.
Yeah.
Let's deal with it now.
We're all adults. We can
make adults be adults.
Yep.
That's probably the number one thing, rather than children sniggering behind backs and that type of stuff. Chinese whispers.
We work in golf clubs.
I love doing
and
that.
There's the most of that childish behaviour in golf clubs because there's ex-lawyers, ex-accountants, people who think they're really important.
Yeah.
And when we work with a golf club, so we do a lot of constitution work in golf because Golf Australia have us engaged as their preferred support provider.
Yeah.
So some of those old people who think that they know everything and others just assume that those people know everything will stand up at the AGM or, where we're looking to get a constitution and all of a sudden we know more and they look like idiots.
Yep.
And everyone else will come up to us afterwards and say, "Oh, you should be at every AGM."
Yeah. Well, we had that. Well, when Michael was working with us, he implemented a new constitution. So our old constitution, like it was on a
real
typewriter.
courier.
It was like courier font. It was on crusty yellow paper. There was copies of shit flying around everywhere. And he handled that AGM when we introduced the constitution.
Okay.
Exactly.
There you
the
go.
same thing. Everyone goes, "Oh my God,
firsthand.
this is awesome." So I've modelled every AGM on that.
Good.
Yeah, I
That's
have.
good.
Yeah. I've still got the little sheet that he used for the day, and I just every
Beautiful.
year.
Well, and as soon as you've got the confidence to do that, and it's easier for us because we're the externals that can lob hand grenades if necessary and walk away. But often when we walk away, the committee have been filled with sufficient confidence to carry that on. So it's fantastic to hear that that's the case. And once that becomes the norm, people expect it, and they don't turn up and act like it's on the day.
Yeah. Well, we had like that spill that we had that year. Like it was wall to wall people, right? So
it's funny how it brings the people out, doesn't it?
So that's for me personally, the attendance of the AGM, as far as how very few people you get, is a great indication of how well you're going. If you've got it wall to wall with people, there's going to be
Something's
issues.
wrong.
Something is wrong.
Yep. That's a really good analogy, I reckon, and I reckon you're bang on. If people are happy, they're not going to turn up.
No.
Because they're happy to just vote by absence,
Carry
on, keep doing what you're doing.
I had a life member, on Saturday, because we get our life members down and run the can bar for us when we're short and do the bar and things like that. So, and I've known Timmy for 20, 30 years, almost 49, maybe 35 years. And he said, "Mate, this is the best he's ever seen the club in his time and he's 40-something years with the club." He said, "It's the best it's ever looked."
That's as nice a testimony.
It is, yeah. I'm not trying to blow smoke up my ass, but that was a collective. That was all of us moving towards, because our main aim, is that each year we want to deliver a project to the club where everyone goes, "How good is this?" The shade sales grant, fields.
Field looks
you
great.
know,
These shade sails look awesome.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
just-
You know,
they're
all
brilliant.
those little things
Yep.
that tell people that the community is engaged with the club. This is fantastic. And you know, with the revenue streams, again, it's just you've got to make it an experience for people to want to keep coming back here and come to the bar and buy their $5 cans or whatever they want to have. You know,
Yeah.
like you know, you also got to recognise you know your key revenue drivers, like you know, like registration, like you know, bar prices, etc. Right? You can't price gouge, and you can't get blood out of a stone. So you know, a lot of you know, we try to sort of offset you know, any rises in those things by attracting more sponsorship, you know. So if we can get, you know, I think we're on track for about $42,000 worth of sponsorship for junior and senior football this year. Now, that's, I think, the most it's ever had. You know, we've got a field signage campaign going on right now. We launched last week about, you know, filling up these with signs, and we've got massive interest from it. You know, we've got 75 opportunities around here at $1,500 a pop. You've got to create additional revenue streams or secondary revenue streams to supplement. Then fundraising comes in, and you know you have a fundraising subcommittee of people who put together 2 functions a year. So they're the strategic things that, as a committee, you go right. So I have Suzanne. I go, Susie, I want 3 functions this year. Boom, she goes off, has a little band of people, and off they go. And she arranges the functions. Very minimal input from the committee. It just happens, you know, and that's. Again, the right people on the bus and the people who want to be interested and involved.
I love the fact that you have systemised and recognised the value of what you have to offer.
Yep.
So it just in confidently saying then 75 spots at $1,500
Yep.
a pop. $1,500 is great value.
Yep.
You know, given the number of people that come
Yep.
through here.
Eyeballs.
Yep. Eyeballs. So at least 4,000 eyeballs, you know, with the 2,000 people here, plus all of the
Yep.
parents, all of the families, all of the visiting clubs.
The live streams that happen, so, you know,
Yep.
West Brisbane Panthers, so all 3 20s reserve grade, A grade, every second weekend. We get 12 games a year. You know, we'll do 8 to 12 grand in revenue between bar and canteen every single one of those games. Everything's live streamed. You know, the sponsorship announcements. Again, it's about creating an event-like experience where people just go, this is fantastic. And to be honest, like, this is the best place in Brisbane to come and watch rugby league on these verandas. Like, these are chockers
Great spot.
when we have. You know, gridiron, live stream every game. You know, those exposure things. Because at the end of the day, sponsorship, you get someone paying $5 grand, someone paying, it doesn't matter what it is to a junior organisation. They don't really have that much expectation about what they're going to get back, because for them it's, you know, it's a good thing for them to do, makes them feel good, and that's great. They're not expecting to get 1 million sales out of it or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right? You know, junior sponsorship is more about contributing back to the community than it is about what's my ROI and my investment for my $1,500.
And in a lot of cases, it's going to be people who are or have been connected with
Yep.
the club.
Yep.
Nevertheless, if you take a business-like approach and you still over-deliver on whatever you promise, and you bring them, in addition to giving them a sign, you say,
Yep.
come to one VIP day, all of a sudden, holy shit,
Yeah.
this club takes
Yep.
this agreement seriously.
Looking after them. So, you know, our sponsorship document, you know, this year went from, you know, 2 pages, I think it's like 15 pages. You know, we've got, you know, a history about the club, the committee, how we are, what our success are, famous people that have played here, you know, Brebo, Vorton,
Yeah.
Berrigan, Hagen, you know, all those. So we're trying to leverage off, you know, the history and you know, and names, well-known names, to be able to go, hey, but, you know, and everyone who, we had this VAS, which had nothing to do with our club. It was just a rugby league academy, you know, having a whole day of games. I sold, I think, 3 or 4 signs that day.
Wow.
To the sponsors. Thanks very much. They don't let their kids play Albany Creek or Brothers or
Wow.
Valleys, right? They go, no, because
It's an opportunity,
Yeah,
yeah.
One bloke overheard me talking to Tim, I was talking about before, the Old Life member, and he's come over and he's gone, I'm missing one of those signs. And I didn't even twig. I said, all right. So I hung around out in the can bar for a bit and got a few more bites from other people when they overheard the conversation. So it's definitely there. We just got to go out and get it. Like, you just can't sit back and go, oh, we've only got 20 grand. Well,
And you, as the president, have a really important role in schmoozing,
Yep.
making friends, making meaningful
Yep.
connections with members and, you know, long-standing life members,
Yep.
new parents. visitors, and if you're too busy running functions, you can't do that.
No, that's right. That's right. Look, mate, being a business owner and running my own business as well has taught me about systemisation, right? And also about creating redundancy around everything. Creating redundancy. Like, so, the guys who do. My dad, he's 74 years of age. Him and Shoney's dad and one of the other fathers. That's our line marking crew, right? So every fortnight they're here and they're marking lines. They're doing touch lines. That's.
But it's social interaction. They're contributing to the community.
Yeah, my dad's on the committee.
And they give. It's awesome. That's great.
This club's great at, like my kids are second generation. There's other family, like the Calligans, for example. And there's still a Callaghan playing here. My boy's under 15. So now that's 3 generations.
Wow.
It's and I think that whole continuity thing, as far as if you look at the names on the board up there's only 2 more to add to that, and that's Colin myself. So, as far as presidents go,
that's crazy.
Have a look at the time.
That is such a small number of presidents.
And I'll tell you, that is probably the reason why this club is still here, to be honest.
Right.
Is people who've taken it on, have done it for the right reasons, and have seen it through. 10 years. There's one for 20 years, I think. So...
Yeah, Duncan.
Yeah.
20 years.
Oh, Donnie. So, Donnie was...
And Frank?
Frank Lynn,
22 years?
Yep, Frank Lynn, since inception. This is the first 1957.
It's crazy.
It is. But that's how you get that continuity.
It is, absolutely. Yeah. Steadying the ship.
And even if you do have, the odd pocket of, shit committees and whatever it is, there's still been that leader there to, bring it all back together again and, right, turn around the Titanic, right, let's keep moving forward. Yeah.
Very good. I better let you get going.
Excellent.
Beautiful. Mike, thank you very much
for
having a chat. It's been brilliant, and I'm sure that clubs will be able to take a lot from...
Mate, thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
So there you go. Thank you very much to Mike for sharing all of those wonderful stories and for his candour, particularly later in the interview.
Yes. I think that was when he thought the recording had stopped.
Yeah.
But it was great. Really good opportunity to sit down.
Bleeping bleeps come out. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, great opportunity to sit down with someone who's obviously a long-term member of the club, spent some time away from the club but came back, and as you can hear, is very passionate about leaving the organisation better for him having been involved. So
thanks very much, Mike Little, and congratulations to West Mitchy, and keep up the good work. Steve, as always, it's a pleasure sharing these times with you. Thanks, of course, to Jess, our wonderful producer and editor, who actually had to work quite hard on this one to make that, to avoid getting basket case clubs getting that little explicit rating symbol on the podcast. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, you can do that on our website, cprgroup.com.au. So make sure you follow us on social media. Remember that we've got LinkedIn and Insta and Facebook are probably places where we're most active. And of course, we look forward to joining you all again for more basket casey goodness next time. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Mick. See you later.
Bye.